Welcome to Gleaning Mustard Seeds with Jerrie Barber. Mr. Barber is a preacher, a ventriloquist, a barefoot runner, and writes 2 blogs. When Jerrie communicates, he encourages people, try not to learn very much. Find a mustard seed. In the next few minutes, try not to learn very much. Look for something you can do to move a mountain, remove a stumbling block, or provide a stepping stone for yourself or someone else. And now, here's Jerrie with this week's mustard seed.
Why would you have an eldership funeral? In the congregation where I was preaching, we were anticipating more leadership in the congregation. In a few weeks, we look forward to completing the selection process and appointing a new shepherd or 2. I asked the elders if they were planning an eldership funeral. They hadn't thought about it. In fact, they had never heard of it. I explained. It was my observation that when new elders are appointed, you don't get new elders. You get junior elders and trainees. They're expected to do everything just as the previous elders have always done. If there's conflict in the eldership, the new men will be recruited for each side. Also, when new elders are appointed, there aren't just new elders, there's a new eldership. If you have a beaker with a chemical in it and place a drop of another chemical in it, you don't just have another drop of stuff. You have a new compound. Anytime there's a change in a leadership group, 1 or more leave, 1 or more are added, you have a new leadership group. I thought it'd be good to acknowledge that, learn from it, and start with a new group. It was one of those ideas I gave for consideration, not knowing if it would be considered or delegated to the wastebasket. The following month in our meeting, the elder said, "We've discussed the eldership funeral. We want to have one. We want you to preach it." People often ask, what do you do at an eldership funeral? The same thing you do at other funerals. Stand around the casket, talk about the deceased, recall their good traits, and talk about how we'll make it without them. One Friday night, we went to a log cabin in Bell Buckle, Tennessee, and had a 3-hour funeral. After reviewing the guidelines for a good discussion, which you can download from a link in the show notes, we began the funeral. This was a parable of what was happening to the present eldership. Everything Jesus taught was in parables. If you don't like a preacher or teacher who tells stories, you wouldn't have liked Jesus, because according to Mark 4:34, he did not tell them anything without using stories. We noted and discussed Paul's emphasis on the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. He said in 1 Corinthians 2:2, "For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified." He added, 1 Corinthians 15:1-4, "Now I would remind you, brothers, of the gospel which I preached to you, which you received, in which you stand, and by which you are being saved, if you hold fast the word which I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, and that he was raised on the 3rd day in accordance with the Scriptures." We wanted to follow Jesus' example of preparing his disciples for his death. I think a definitive passage is Matthew 16:21. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and the 3rd day be raised. We reflected on the advantages of funerals. Solomon said, "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will take it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of faith the heart is made glad." Ecclesiastes 7:2-3. We read funeral passages, Job 14:1-14, John 14:1-3, John 11:17-27. Word and PDF outlines documents for the funeral are available in the show notes. We recall the history of this group of leaders in this congregation. They became shepherds during a difficult time in the congregation's history. Not one of them had ever served as an overseer, so every situation was new to them. They were dealing with a hurt and unsettled congregation because of sustained conflict. They had led well. The conflict had subsided. Now there was peace. Read about the progress in a blog post, Starting from Scratch. This is a link in the show notes. We stood around the casket and talked about the eldership, recalling early fears, discussing how they had become a team and how they were now as a group. If a group of elders has unfinished business, it'll be transferred to the new elders being appointed. Our attention turned to the additional leadership soon to be appointed. How would they be integrated? Would they be told the rules? Could a new elder suggest changing some of the ways they operate? A group's rules are often unconscious, unspoken, understood, and contradictory. We don't think about or discuss them, but you are in serious trouble if you break one. They considered this and said they can change some rules, but some they can't. They came up with 2 lists of rules, negotiable and non-negotiable. My question? Will you tell them about these 2 lists before or after they're ordained? Read about this in a blog post, Shepherds, What Are Your Rules? A link is in the show notes. I enjoyed the night. We celebrated how God had worked with these men during a difficult time. The church had grown and matured. They had survived the storm and were enjoying the sunshine. Our next topics: what hopes and dreams do you have? How will you communicate these to each other, the new elders, and the congregation? We concluded with the 5 tasks of dying, how to end any relationship. 1, forgive me. 2, I forgive you. 3, I love you. 4, thank you. 5, goodbye. I preached the funerals of 4 elderships where I've worked, including 1 interim congregation, and officiated at 1 funeral at the beginning of a new shepherd's orientation workshop. I think it's healthy to discuss these issues. Check the links in the show notes for the additional items that I've mentioned in this episode. Many people get excited over resurrection. Few want to volunteer for crucifixion.
Thank you for listening to Gleaning Mustard Seeds with Jerrie Barber. If you found a mustard seed, send a text or email with the link to a friend. This podcast was brought to you by Jerry's book, Between Preachers, You Can Grow Through Interim Ministry. Dale Jenkins wrote in the introduction, while Jerry has written the only book I know by a member of the Church of Christ on interim ministry, the excellent principles in this book could be used as a book on healthy moving or healthy leader-minister relations, or a book for every Christian on healthy living. I'd encourage you to get one for every elder you know. You can order your book from Amazon. There will be a link in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Jerry looks forward to next week as we continue to collect and plant mustard seeds.